What's up guys, today we will be going over the new sword rework that is going to be coming out next season, and in this video we will be breaking down all the different changes to swords, and we'll be trying to break down if I think the swords will be better because of these changes or actually even worse. Anyways, let's go ahead and get straight into it. So they start off by saying swords are getting a little more love this season. While swords have been a staple of Destiny ever since their introduction in the Taken King, we felt they were due for an update, both to freshen them up, but also to allow us more room to work with them in later releases. So they start off with sword energy. Swords now have their own reserve of energy that recharges naturally on its own, is not to be confused with ammo capacity. This energy will overtake your melee slot while you're wielding a sword and is spent on various actions. So far this sounds amazing. You pretty much can't use your melee ability anyways while having a sword out, so this is a perfect opportunity for something like this. So they start off with guarding. Guarding now uses sword energy instead of consuming ammo. Different guards have different consumption rates, damage resistance, and behaviors, so be sure to experiment and find a guard type you like. You will still need at least one ammo to begin guarding though. Back during Season of the Drifter, the Stronghold exotic for Titans was introduced, allowing them to guard with a relative impunity and open up a more interesting opportunities for swords to shine in a variety of content, which caused us to take another look at the guard function itself. Although the guard function has always existed, it was never really considered worth the cost. With this change, we hope that players will use their guard intelligently to protect themselves instead of it being an almost unused button. Rest easy, Stronghold also has been modified to still allow Titans more unique guardian experience. So far this makes actually a lot of sense. Before, guarding took ammo whenever you got hit, which meant less using your actual sword in the future because of the fact that you're going to be eating through the ammo by guarding. So it was pretty much never worth to give up your light attacks and heavy attacks just to guard for a few seconds. An idea where different guards will give you different consumption rates and also damage resistance, all that stuff makes a lot of sense, and that's a really good change. But we'll come back to this topic very heavily in a few seconds. Now moving on to light attacks. Grounded light attacks for all swords will now loop for infinite combo, and all swords can cleave. While the basic 3-hit combo is quite a staple of melee weapons in many games, in a shooter this leaves the player extremely open to enemies. By letting the light attacks loop, we also push them and the heavy attacks farther apart. Cleaving on light attacks was previously only for the aggressive swords, but we opted to add it to the rest of them for the more hack and slash style. So this change is cool. I don't think it's necessary or will make swords much better than they already are. Pretty much what this means is right now if you start doing light attacks, it will do like a 3-hit combo, and after the 3rd hit there will be a huge delay before the 4th, 5th, and 6th. And the same between the 6th and 7th, and I can definitely see it leaving you open to attacks between the 3rd and 4th or 6th and 7th, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, you are using a sword, you are playing up close and personal, so obviously this change won't necessarily hurt, but I don't think it's gonna be something that's gonna make like swords amazing overnight, but we'll definitely have to see and try it ourselves. Now for the most interesting change of them all yet, heavy attacks. Heavy attacks now consume sword energy, which right off that first sentence, I wish they were a little bit more clear. It says heavy attacks now consume sword energy. Before we look at guarding, it says guarding now uses sword energy instead of consuming ammo. So do heavy attacks still use ammo, but now on top of that also sword energy? Like, I wish they were a little bit more clear than that, because right now, honestly, I can see both arguments. Anyways, moving on, while you are always able to perform a heavy attack, the attack is stronger when you have full energy and weaker when you don't. A lot of swordplay in many situations simply boil down to endlessly mashing the heavy attack button instead of mixing up attacks, which wasn't quite the most interesting experience. Do note that aerial attacks, as a general rule, do not consume sword energy, but that can vary based on the sword. So that sentence also makes me believe that heavy attacks still will consume regular ammo no matter what. It's just now that the ground based heavy attacks will now only do damage based on the sword energy that it consumes. And for me, this is where the red flags start getting thrown in the air. Nowhere in here does it mention the fact that heavy attacks are being buffed, because what this is pretty much going to do is if you use a heavy attack at full sword energy, one, it doesn't say how much sword energy that will consume. Given the fact that it's going to be stronger based on how much you have, I would assume if you do a heavy attack at full energy, it will consume all of it and that'll be the most damage you can do. But will that damage just be the same as it is right now, or is it going to be higher than what we can do right now? And if we do a heavy attack at half sword energy, will it be half the damage of one that is full? So information like that would have been great to see along with this notes right here, because if a buff to the actual damage output of heavy attacks does not come along with this change, we're pretty much getting a strict nerf to our heavy attack because we won't be able to do it as often, And in their second note, they said they wanted to go away from mashing the heavy attack button because it was not a very interesting experience. Well, there's a lot of things in the game, for example, pretty much every weapon, where you just stand in like a bubble or a well and shoot a boss, then reload and shoot it again. And you can argue that is not very fun either, but it is what makes the weapons good. So I can definitely see swords being a lot worse because of this change alone. And the reason is just to make them not boring. Well, I can tell you for a fact, a weapon that is good, that might be slightly boring, is gonna be a lot better than a weapon that will never be used. And let's just keep throwing the red flags. So heavy attacks now consume sword energy, right? If we go back up to guarding now uses sword energy instead of consuming ammo. And their whole reason of this change is to allow players to guard more often. And their main thought to why people didn't guard that much before was because it used ammo, so it was never worth the trade-off. Well, now instead of making guarding cost ammo, you're making guarding cost heavy attack damage, which is pretty much the exact same thing. If guarding more often makes it so I can never do a heavy attack that is worthwhile, I'm not gonna be guarding. So the whole change to this entire system in the name of making people be able to guard more often makes no sense. If you think about it critically, it just simply doesn't make sense. Do they expect people just to be standing there guarding for no reason? You're gonna be guarding when you're going into battle or coming out of battle and you want to live. And the whole reason going into battle with a sword is to probably land a heavy attack on some boss or some major or something like that, and you might need to guard on the way out. I mean, it's not like people are just gonna be standing out in the open guarding for no reason. They're gonna be guarding because they're trying to use the sword against enemies, and in the process of guarding, you're then pretty much make yourself not be able to even use the sword, which makes no sense. Finally, we have one last note, shield bypass. A portion of most swords attacks now partially bypass elemental shields. We added this to give swords a little bit of a personality difference from shotguns, who share a very similar role in combat as powerful close quarter combat weapons. So all swords are elemental because they're in the heavy slot, and pretty much all elemental weapons break shields in one hit for a sword. So bypassing the shield really isn't that big a deal because you'll probably break the shield in one hit anyways. The only time this will be useful will be in match game nightfalls, but at the same time it's going to be way more efficient just to break the shield then hit them with the sword. So that's a change that will help, but not very much, and probably won't even be noticeable. Right here they do say in general swords have also had some of the damage amounts for different attacks changed. Once again, I would like to see more info about that in the heavy attack slot in this patch note, because I think if you're going to give us this information early, if you don't give the correct information, it might lead to people getting mad in the first place when it might actually not be as bad as they assume. So I would definitely like to see that explained a little bit more in the actual paragraphs of light attacks, heavy attacks, and things like that. So overall, what do I think about this rework? I think the sword energy is a good idea and will definitely make guarding more useful. But the fact that it's also tied to heavy attacks is what pretty much contradicts that entire statement, and I think will result in the same issue it already had, where guarding just isn't simply worth it. Light attacks doing an infinite combo is a good change. I don't think it's gonna be like a make or break and make swords god tier overnight, but it definitely won't hurt. And with the information we have currently, I can only assume that the heavy attack is gonna be a nerf overall, unless when you have full sword energy, it's gonna do a lot more damage than it does currently. Because when you think about it, we won't be able to do nearly as many heavy attacks in a row on a single target like we can right now. It might only be one at a time, and then they think we're going to be using light attacks in between, and I can tell you for a fact, the DPS of that will not be very good, and the whole point of a heavy weapon is to use it versus heavy enemies, which is another thing that doesn't make sense with the entire direction of this rework. I mean, these swords are heavy weapons, and they're kind of pushing them away from being used like a heavy weapon. The whole playstyle they're kind of pushing for is just doing light attacks on, you know, red bars, then maybe doing one heavy attack on a major or something like that every like 10-ish seconds. And I can tell you that will not make swords meta. It simply won't. If you want great ad clear in the heavy slot, you'll be using a machine gun, and if you want good major clear, you can pretty much use any other thing in the game. And what confuses me the most about this rework is if they truly wanted swords to be good, they already have the blueprint to make swords good in PvE. Swords in Destiny 1 were top of the PvE meta, and the main differences in D1 compared to D2 were they have more ammo, their heavy attacks did more damage, and consumed less energy per heavy attack. And that was pretty much it. It wasn't the fact that we couldn't guard, it wasn't the fact that light attacks didn't infinitely combo. It was the fact that you could go up to a boss and do heavy attacks over and over again, and it was actually good damage output. And they're pretty much going the opposite direction with this rework, making them less about doing damage on a single target and more about doing different sword combos, and also using infinite light attacks and throwing in guards randomly. Like, I don't know. I don't think these changes are geared to make them meta. If they wanted to make them meta, I think they know what they have to do and they can just look at what they were in D1. So overall, I'm just super confused what the actual purpose of this rework is. Is it to make them more fun? I don't really know, because I don't think it's on work. Anyways, this video is getting really long. I wasn't putting my thoughts to the potential change the word line, and what we saw on Twitter confirmed pretty much. If you guys want a different video talking about that a bit, I can. But anyways, if you made it this far in the video, I love you. And let me know what you think about this sword rework. I'm kind of on the edge. I think it could be cool if like heavy attacks are way more powerful than they are now. But at the same time, reading in between the lines of what they're saying, it just doesn't make too much sense. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.